This podcast is rated S for spoilers. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to the Half Past Podcast. This is episode 96, the movie review of Aladdin, 2019. I'm Guy Ritchie, here with me is my friend and co-pilot, Ian Jones.
I believe that it's pronounced Aladdin.
Nice.
That's how my Filipino grandma used to always say it. Aladdin.
Oh, nice.
Aladdin. Yeah, no, that's definitely how it should be. That's fancier somehow.
It's definitely fancier.
It sounds more mysterious, right?
Aladdin. It does, it really does.
And then he puts a cloak up over his face.
Oh, man. So, this is the third, I believe, installment of our quarantine series of us going back to all the movies that we wanted to basically review, but we didn't because of whatever circumstances happened, which is usually just life. And so Aladdin, we decided to do Aladdin this time around, and I remember I saw this movie in theaters when it happened, and it was like way late when I finally went to the theaters to see it. I think it was only in the theaters for another, 3 or 4 weeks after I finally saw it.
Ah, okay.
And so it was definitely an interesting experience because I think the only people in the theaters were Jackie and I watching this movie. So I didn't get that whole aspect of seeing how the audience reacts to certain situations.
Sure,
and to kind of get that feeling that how the audience either likes or hates the movie. So it's a little disappointing. And we've been talking about that recently, about how during all this quarantine and COVID and movie theaters being out, and we're just man, having that aspect is so much nicer when you're in the movie theater to kind of feel the audience.
It's definitely an experience,
Yes.
you would think it might pull you out of a movie if there's a big laugh or a big surprise or something like that, but it really doesn't. And I think that that's something genuinely too that I miss about movies is the experience. And it's also why I hate a lot of Oscar worthy movies.
Yeah.
Annie. So speaking of Guy Ritchie, and I'm sort of jumping the gun here, but fine. She was like, I really like Guy Ritchie's last movie. She's in comparison, and that's because we rented, I think it's called The Gentleman. And it's kind of a gangster movie that just came out, and it's a really clever movie, but it sort of takes a while to get into it, and then you're like, oh, okay, this is smart and really well done. And she's like, you and Graham should do a podcast on this, and I was just like, well, there's not really a whole lot of ammo in a movie like this in dramas, even though they're a little quirky and maybe kind of funny in some areas.
Yeah.
It's not really one of those things where, it's the experience that Graham and I are looking for.
Yes.
And that's one of the big reasons why I like going to movies. And that's not to have to sit there and think a whole lot. It's a distraction. It's a way to get away. It's, you're going there to be entertained. And a lot of dramas and a lot of things that are maybe really beautiful and works of art, they don't really fit that bill for us to do podcasts. And so that was a little discussion we had because we just watched Guy Ritchie's latest movie, which because of COVID went right to an on-demand release.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's funny that you say that because one of the conversations I had with my coworkers, basically, it was when Endgame came out. And so Endgame came out, and they were watching Endgame, and he felt that when he went to go see it the first weekend. So I mean, you're gonna get a different experience anyway. Usually, you get more vocal people because they're the ones that are excited to see the movie, which I enjoy. I love that part of being in a theater. But he was getting a little annoyed with people like reacting to things. He said that it took him out of the movie when that was happening. But the thing that I thought was funny is when he went to go see it again, it was like a few weeks later, and then the audience being quiet bothered the heck out of him. So he missed the reactions. And I'm like, well, that's because it's an experience, man. You want everyone to react when Cap finally holds Mjolnir.
The hammer.
Yeah, you like that's what you want. You want the crowd to like, oh yeah, there it is. Like that's part of the aspect. You want people to be excited when Cap finally says assemble. Like that sort of type of things that happen in the movie theater, you don't get anywhere else. And so it's great hearing, just feeling the audience. It's a part of the experience, man. And so I just think that. I just hope that movie theaters survive all of this for sure. This is what I want to happen, you know.
Me too, you know, and I think they will because everyone's in the same boat. They're sick of being at home, you know. You know, Peanut was telling me last night, like, you know, when's the phase gonna happen that's gonna allow me to go shopping? And I had to explain to her that, you know, that's not going to be till the end of the month up here, and even when that does happen, we're probably going to have to go in and not browse everything. You know, we're probably going to have to go in and get what we need, and that's a really tough thing to explain to kids. And you know, you see how adults are handling it, and it's not even good.
No, it's not good.
I mean, this is the weird thing that might This is going to sound strange, but this is the bizarre thing that might actually save shopping malls. We'll see. but I'm going to argue that this could actually end up saving retail stores.
That's so crazy,
you know,
man.
And you see what it's like when you don't have it, right? You know, that's just like supply and demand. When you can't go shopping, when you can't actually go and look at things, and you have roped off sections of Target. What do you really want to do? You know, we all were getting lazy and into the habit of let's not go to the store, and now we can't go to the store, and we really want to.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of a little crazy thing there.
Yeah, it's, you know, out here they've been starting to open everything up. So Jackie and I took a drive yesterday, and we ended up coming across like a bunch of casinos that were just like packed full of, like there were so many cars. I was just like shocked. Wow. I was shocked at how many cars were at the casinos. And a few of the places, you know, out here, it's really common to have seating outside of a small establishment who just doesn't have a dine-in area. They just have an outdoors dine area. And we saw that was also packed. There was just like no distancing whatsoever. It was just like shocking.
That's sort of
I was like, ugh.
Kind of an issue, right?
Yeah, you know, right?
Like if you're gonna do it, let's be responsible about it.
Yes, yeah. And so we'll see what happens. Yeah, it was pretty interesting to see kind of everything. I was just like, whoa, there's like a lot of people. They started opening things up this weekend, and like, oh man. There's a lot of people out and about, so this is kind of interesting.
Oh, jeez.
With that note, let's get on to Aladdin.
All right, let's do it. A blah blah, baby.
A blah blah. So let's start with the synopsis here. So, a kind-hearted street urchin and a power-hungry grand vizier vie for a magic lamp that has the power to make their deepest wishes come true. Which again is not entirely how this movie goes, and not the original one either. So that's kind of I love some of these descriptions I get. Should probably start writing my own. Anyway, this movie's directed by Guy Ritchie, which I remember when I first saw Aladdin, the remake, get announced. I was shocked that they chose Guy Ritchie. Right. It was like such a weird, like, this guy does like gangster movies for the most part. Most of his career is like mob type movies. And so it was so bizarre to see them use him. And I don't have no idea why they chose Guy Ritchie, because it doesn't seem like this is up his alley at all. It doesn't. And it's really weird. So it's he's probably most known for like Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, and then like Sherlock Holmes, but also The Man from U.N.C.L.E., which we also reviewed, which is actually a good movie. I feel like everyone should watch The Man from U.N.C.L.E. It bombed in the box office, but it's legitimately a good movie to go see. It's really fun to watch that one. It's easily the best movie that probably Armie Hammer's been in.
So real quick, because we mentioned the gentleman earlier.
Yes.
Part of a little Easter egg in there is one of the characters is trying to sell this screenplay, and there's just one quick shot where he's talking with a producer, and in the background are two movie posters, and one of them is A Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Oh, nice.
I was just like, yeah, that's, like, I hope that was sort of just a set decor. I really hope he didn't write that into the movie, that like someone just thought they were being clever by sneaking in a couple of Guy Ritchie posters into the background.
Oh man, that's great. This movie starring Will Smith as Genie, who I guess all you need to know is that he's Fresh Prince and he used to save our summers in the 90s. That's just like all he did. That's all you need to know about him. Mena Massoud as Aladdin. He was in Open Heart and Jack Ryan and, of course, Reprisal. It's kind of funny. A lot of these actors we haven't seen very much of. They picked a bunch of people other than Will Smith that you don't see very often in movies in general.
And he claims he hasn't had an audition since.
Oh gosh, that is not good.
No, not at all.
Well, we will talk about that later. Okay. So, Naomi Scott is Jasmine, and she was in Terra Nova, and she was also in Power Rangers, which we also reviewed. And she was the Pink Ranger. She played Kimberly, and
she was in that movie.
Yes,
okay.
Yes,
right.
That was her. So we reviewed that movie. So if anyone wants to listen to that podcast, you can. But she was also in the Terra Nova TV show, which was not a great show. It was one of those shows that I watched that I enjoyed, but I knew it was going to get canceled. Like, it's not that good. It was just...
Yeah, it felt like it should get canceled.
Yeah, it definitely felt like it should get canceled, and it did. It lasted, I don't even know if it finished the full season, but it got canceled pretty quick. Marwan Kenzari as Jafar, who was in Ben-Hur, which we also reviewed, The Mummy, which we should have reviewed, and then Murder on the Orient Express, which we also reviewed. Those are probably the ones.
The Orient Express.
He is. I don't remember. He was. I mean, there were so many characters in there. I don't know which specific archetype he was, but he was definitely one of the archetypes in that movie for sure. Navid Negahban as Sultan, and he's basically just been in TV shows pretty much his whole career. But he's probably best known for is Legion, the FX series. The last one I'm going to say is Nasim Pedrad as Dahlia, who is an SNL actor, and it is very readily apparent that she is an SNL actor in this movie. It's like every time I see her, she has this look on her face where I feel like it's just it's like a character from SNL. It just is. And that's what it feels like every time I saw Dahlia in this freaking movie. Especially when she's talking to Genie, when he's in his human form at the door with the flowers, like that whole smirk on her face. And then her closing the door. It was like an SNL sketch. That's what that whole sequence was. It was just, I just thought it was funny. She was also in Mulaney and Scream Queens. So now that we're done with this cast, let's get right into the quirks and likes of this movie.
Sounds good.
So I'm gonna go right, since you brought it up that this guy had some trouble finding auditions. One of my problems with this movie absolutely is Aladdin. himself.
Okay, let's jump right into that.
Okay, so the problem I have with Aladdin is he is not nearly charismatic enough. Just like on screen, it's really unfortunate because Aladdin is supposed to be this very like, he's obviously a street rat because we get the songs, and that's what he is, and he's a thief, but he's a thief with a heart of gold. And the thing about it is, when you watch the original, he has a charm about him. Yes. He's got like this smile and this like smirk that he does a lot, and he's just kind of, and he almost like charms his way out of situations, even though he's a bright kid, right? He's like a bright guy, and he knows how to like get out of situations, but he almost does it in a very charming kind of way. And this actor does not pull that off at all. And so like the whole time I see him on screen, I'm just really disappointed that the titular character is not where he should be. It's right. Like really upsetting.
I think it's a bigger issue with the movie that we can either get into later on, but I think you're absolutely right. And the thing is, like, I think they cast the right guy. He looks like right? Aladdin,
He does.
Like, he's got all the kind of qualities that you would probably want in a leading man, but I don't think they give him those moments because of the pacing. I don't think he gets time to simply shine as Aladdin and become likable. Yes. like Aladdin in the animated cartoon, he's endearing right away, even though he's kind of a jerk, but he's charming, and you realize that he's not a bad guy, that, he grew up without parents, and, there are a lot of kids that are in the same situation that he is in. But I think because of, the fact that the whole movie is like a rush shot for shot recreation, you don't have those moments where Aladdin is just kind of staring at the palace and wondering what could be.
Yes.
You don't really have moments alone with him until the very end, and that's like the first scene where he's likable is when he walks away, and I'm just like, well, where is this earlier in the movie? Like, why aren't we getting these scenes with him? The movie's called Aladdin, and we're not getting a chance to, I think, like the character. So that's a problem.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue with this movie is, like you said, in terms of Aladdin, the biggest issue with this movie is that what you get at the end of the movie, like you're saying, where he's likable, there's a time period within the beginning of this movie, because he's introduced immediately, because it is Aladdin. The problem is, you don't, like you said, you don't get the time with him, and it's definitely this rush through the whole thing, and you're just like, man, you never get to sit down with him at all, and it's really disappointing. And so the problem with that is it's not that that's not, it definitely doesn't help the character. The thing is like, during the time periods where he can shine, he doesn't. And that's the other problem. There's definitely a stop in that beginning sequence where he's talking with Jasmine and him having a conversation, because even after that whole sequence that you get with him doing the song and everything about him being a street rat, there's a time period he has to stop and slow down with Jasmine. Yet that charm does not show up. And I don't know why that is. It's like, dang it, there's like definitely opportunities, there's nuggets in there where you could do it, but it's just not there. And I'm not sure what happened. I don't know if the actor was like rushed, or was the filming rushed, or whatever the heck happened, but he definitely doesn't feel like Aladdin when you watch the movie.
Okay.
He just doesn't feel like it. The other thing that thoroughly bothers me through this entire movie, and this is a very technical problem, and this is classic me to complain about something technical, but the lighting of this movie bothers the shit out of me, man.
The lighting?
The lighting really bothers the shit out of me.
Right.
Okay, so here's the deal. Now, this might be part of this might be Guy Ritchie's fault, because he doesn't work like this often. Like, there's a lot of blue screen in this movie, and there's like so much lighting that just doesn't, like, the outdoors doesn't look outdoors.
Yeah,
and when they're inside, it doesn't look like every shot looks like it was on a soundstage, which is nothing wrong with doing.
Oh, I wish I could send you a screenshot of what I did, and after this podcast, I will send you a screenshot of what I wrote, just so you know that I'm not. That is crazy to me that you just said that.
It's everything looks like it's on a soundstage, and I'm just like, why is...
Because it is on a soundstage.
Yes, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you have to make it look right.
Well, okay, so the argument I was going to make, and I hate to jump in here, but so, because this was one of my quirks, too. The argument that I would make is, if you're going to do a flat-out musical, then it's okay, I think, for it to look like this. There can't be anything in between. You have to push it one way or the other.
Yes.
And I think the mistake is they should have gone more realistic. So less cartoony. Like, everything was super well finished. It didn't look like it was lived in at all. And even like, the sets are beautiful, but they're absolutely soundstage sets, and that totally takes it out. And, like, there is no natural lighting, so it's just like, well, why didn't they just build sets outside? And that's because it's more expensive to do that. But then you don't have any of the texturing, you don't have any of the layering.
No,
that should have been there. There could have been ways to make it beautiful, and still have it feel like it's lived in. And nothing feels like that. Everything is artificially lit. You are absolutely correct, because it's all 100% on a soundstage.
Yep. There's like no shots that are in a natural, like, I feel like there's no shots in a natural environment. And it's just like, what is happening with this? And I firmly believe that I feel like part of this is like the option of working with somebody like Guy Ritchie, who most of the time he works in like grungy environments. Like, that's how his movies are. They always are filmed on location. So it's like, it takes certain directors who are used to this to like figure this out and make it look correctly. But again, Guy Ritchie's not that type of director anyway. Like, he's not a visual director. It's not what he's known for. So I just thought it was such a weird choice to use him for this, especially if they were planning on going this direction. Another example I give is one of the things that I can't stand about Black Panther is there's definitely 2 or 3 scenes specifically in Black Panther that has this same problem. One of which is the one where he is fighting Killmonger when they have the waterfalls and all that other stuff going on, and they're doing the like ritual battle to see who takes over. That entire scene is clearly on a soundstage, and it's lit that way, and it feels that way, and it's just like, there's stuff like that, except this movie is all of that. The entire movie feels that way. Right. And it just bothered the heck out of me through the whole time that I watched this movie, and it's really upsetting, because I feel like this is an opportunity where you could, because of like the locations that you could have filmed this at and how you could have like done things that were just like really cool. You could have just had, there was definitely potential to have an Academy Award for like, production design. Cause if there's an opportunity there, cause this would be like doing something like Agrabah would be gorgeous if you really wanted to like focus on that. But it definitely bothered the heck out of me. The only other thing I have to mention is I really, really can't stand they added a song in here. They added Speechless to this movie, and the first time you hear it, when you get like the very first little inkling of it, I think it's well done and put into the movie really well, because she's dealing with the fact that she feels like she's a little bit powerless in this situation. And so it makes sense that she would have this. But then you have this really weird scene towards the end of the movie where she does her like reprisal, and there's like this huge thing of like her being speechless and so on and so forth, and it's like the visuals are really good but don't make any sense.
Right,
and it's just like
everyone's just disappearing, and it's like, is she like magicking them away?
Yeah, you're just like, what is happening here? And what, like, other than the fact that the visual looks cool, because she's like walking and seeing people disappear and things are in like slow motion and all this other stuff. It's like a cool visual, but it doesn't make any sense in the context of what's happening. So I like couldn't stand that scene. I mean, it's a shame because I think the song's good, but like it just doesn't make any sense in that scene. And then after that, she decides to stand up for herself, which is fine. So you get a little less than that. But after that, she's completely neutralized to the rest of this movie. Like, completely. And so then you're just like, well, crap. Why do you have such this, like, really, like, power-type song, and then she almost is speechless through the rest of this movie? Like, after she makes her statement after that.
That's a really good point, yeah.
She doesn't really say anything. She gets, like, magicked out, and she's just, like, frozen for a huge portion of the movie after her song and after her statement. And that was it. And so it's just like, well, crap, why did this happen this way? It was just like a really weird way for this to all come together. And it bothered me the first time I watched it, and it definitely bothered me the second time I watched it. So it just was one of those things.
Gotcha.
But that was all I have.
That's a very good point. Yeah. After Jasmine finally does have that moment, which I think is important for her character.
Yes.
And for the message of the movie, she is then effectively silenced.
Yes.
Which I'll roll into one of my quirks in a second.
Nice.
We need to talk about the blue 500-pound elephant in the room. I don't know what the right answer would be for this, but Will Smith is very creepy and never ever looks right as the blue genie. In every scene, there's just something about it that feels off, and it's obviously like a CG model with his head popped on it, but even then, sometimes the head doesn't feel right, and I'm not sure if it would have been better to make him look like the genie from the animated cartoon, but maybe it would have been a little bit better to not make it look so much like him. And the only thing I can really compare it to, which I always felt this was odd, is the Banner Hulk in the last Avengers movie. Just to me never felt like, it just doesn't feel like either of them. Yeah. And this to me didn't feel like, and I don't know, like, you have to have the blue genie in there, but I don't know what the right call is. And
I have no idea.
And the only thing I can think of is it might just be like Sonic, where they should have made an animated version of Robin Williams, and that's a really tough thing to step into because his performance was amazing, and it makes that entire movie. So you need a big star to step into those shoes. And, you know, Will Smith is still one of the biggest stars on the planet. But I just, for me, it doesn't work. It doesn't work when he's a blue CG monster genie. It just, the visual isn't working. And it's like that in every scene.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't know what the right decision was, other than to just bypass it entirely.
And
just
not use it?
I think the correct decision was to not use it. Have a blue effect happen when he shows up, but when he appears, it's like he is through most of the movie.
Right, yeah.
Where he,
just have him look like Will Smith.
Will Smith, yeah. And just go, I think there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't think there's a problem with having a more CG kind of version of Will Smith, because the thing that's interesting about you saying this is one of the things that Will Smith said before this movie came out, and he's like, after he was done filming and everything, he specifically was just kind of like, even though genies don't wear shoes, I have some very large ones to fill, and I tried my best, is basically what he said, like on Twitter or something. And I think his performance was actually pretty good in terms of the character. But in terms of like the visual aspect to it, I almost feel like they should have just let him be Will Smith and just have this character and have him be kind of on his own and just let that be what it is, you know? And the thing that I think is interesting with this conversation is that you get Friend Like Me, which is a really big, extravagant thing in not only in the animated movie, but also when you watch the musical. It's huge. It's like a huge part of that musical. It's like gorgeous and it's well done and everything. When you I know you haven't seen the stage performance, but it's like that. It's like just as extravagant and crazy as it is in the animated movie from the 90s. The thing that I thought was way more impressive and way more fun to watch, and I think this is very telling, is the Prince Ali song when he's just him. I thought that sequence was way more fun to watch, to just have him like, you know, dressed in drag, just acting like a woman, and then just like doing all these I thought that was good. I thought that this is like, in terms of the sequences of the genie, usually Friend Like Me is the major one, but really Prince Ali was like all just Will Smith being this character, and I thought that was one of the better parts of the movie. It was just like such a fun, ridiculous thing, and that was no CG. It was just people dancing and acting and just doing what they want, and I thought that was like such an advantage in this, and I don't see why it couldn't have been something similar to that for Friend Like Me, or even just in general, just have him be him as opposed to a blue genie. You know, the same concept of when you watch the stage performance of Aladdin, the way they do it is it's just a man in a costume, but he's wearing like a blue costume, and that's just like how they deal with it. You know? So you know that it's Genie. And that's it. And I think that I don't see a problem with having that in there. You know? And then the visual is just very strange. It's a little weird, and you're right. The head doesn't always kind of move with the body. It's like real kind of a strange effect. It's weird. It's definitely bizarre.
This was something that sort of bothered me, and it's kind of an issue that Disney has had for a long time with villains just being one-dimensional.
Yeah.
And so I don't know why it would be different this time, but like one of the things that was bothering me was Jafar's obsession with destroying Shirabad.
Yeah, I don't know why that was there.
Addressed.
No.
We know that it's through exposition, through vomiting out exposition, which you know how that's my favorite thing.
Oh, yeah.
Exposition on the fly. We know that it's Jasmine, it's her mother's former kingdom.
Yes.
We know that her mother is outright murdered, but that is never discussed.
Yeah.
So that got me thinking, like, well, was Jafar from Shirabad in the first place? Like, maybe as a young boy, he was in servitude to Jasmine's mother, but he found a better life in Agrabah. He found a way to become a sorcerer and work his way up. But what if Jafar killed her mother to get closer to the Sultan? And I was just like, well, damn, that would have been interesting. And
that would have been real interesting.
None of it is explored. Like, that totally changes the dynamic of everything. And like,
that is definitely a darker Disney movie.
It is a darker Disney movie. And ultimately, I'm intrigued. There's no place for something like that in this movie.
No, but I'm intrigued. I'm fascinated by the fact that like that would give him backstory, right. Especially if, because the thing is what could be is Agrabah could be no different than, what is it, Shedada or whatever. Yeah. It could be no different, because the fact of the matter is everyone's poor and everything in Agrabah also.
Right. Yeah.
So having her like be in this situation wouldn't be much different. So the fact that he like left that area and then came back to Agrabah as a way to like build his way up, and then he actually takes her out and all that, that would have been a far more interesting story, and it would explain why Jafar is the way he is.
Right.
You know?
Yes.
You only get a hint that he lived like Aladdin
at one point. Yeah.
At one point.
And so I was like, that's a great little layer. And then they don't ever really peel it back. There isn't the payoff. And then touching on a point that you just made, like at no point do they actually address the poverty, the income inequality like it's talked about. But Jasmine still doesn't really have an appreciation for what it is.
No.
And so essentially the story is just about, the fact that Aladdin gets to become the Sultan. Now, this isn't the case in this version, but it doesn't really, Disney was trying to put a little bit of a modern spin, which I liked, but then they still missed, I think, a bigger issue, and that is nothing is ever done for the rest of the kingdom, which is clearly struggling for the most part.
Oh, yeah.
So that's just one of those things where I was like, wow, they talk about it and then it never is, it's never addressed. It still ends up being about who she's going to marry, which is a really bizarre point to end the movie on. After she goes through all this and she can be Sultan, right?
And the thing about it is there's even an opportunity in this movie to where you can fix that with a real simple plot thing, which I would probably hate, but at least it would be addressed. But it's not like Jafar doesn't have the Sultan under his spell through. It's obviously addressed that he's under his spell through this entire time period. He definitely uses it. So there's no reason why you can't address that a lot of the decisions that Sultan is making is so that he could enrich himself and by proxy Jafar, especially when he finally takes over. You would have that addressed, that the reason why Agrabah's the way it is because of Jafar. Because he's influencing.
That is rather brilliant, Mr. Ricks, and it is not in the movie. Wow. No. What a great point.
So it's just another thing that, just having that extra little exposition, that would have been, at least it would explain it, and then you could kind of see maybe some of the conflict that Jasmine has with the Sultan, which is actually less so in this movie than it was in the old one. In the old one, she's really on his ass a lot, because that's Jasmine's character. So it would explain that aspect, because he's doing terrible things, but then he's under the spell, and so otherwise okay, she has the opportunity that when she becomes, she's no longer under this, or Sultan's no longer under the spell because she's Sultan and Jafar's gone. So you would have that type of thing that could have happened, but that's not how this is done. So.
No. So you mentioned the soundstage thing. I think we covered it, but it's pretty incredible. So the other thing is, when the movie first started, because my first time and only time seeing this movie was on Disney Plus.
Yes.
There is a warning about flashing lights at the beginning of this movie. There is a second warning underneath it in its own text bubble that says this movie contains product placement. And I thought that was so weird. I've never seen that warning before.
Yeah,
and so
I've never seen that.
Right away I saw that, and so I'm like, wait a minute. How could this movie contain product placement? And then okay, so I'll get there. Hang with me. So Annie and Tristan start joking about the genie loving Coca-Cola, and even though they were joking, I kept looking over at them like, is it really going to be something like that? Because the genie does weird things like dropping the mic, which doesn't make any sense in a movie. That's even though it's a fantasy.
Yes.
That technology doesn't exist. That shouldn't happen.
No.
To drop a mic thing
Yeah.
is kind of funny, but it's also like winking at the audience in a way.
Yes.
So I was like, oh my god, maybe there is going to be something really weird where the genie does a product placement. And so, as it turns out, what had happened was when this movie was released, Disney and Zales did a promotion together, and so some of Jasmine's rings that she wore in the movie were available to buy after the fact, but they never zoom in on them or anything like that. But that was just one of those things where it annoyed me that popped up because I've never seen that before, and then I was just on the lookout the whole time for it. Nice. Like I was like, where is it? Where's the close up of Acura? Like I was really annoyed that they flashed that up because I was watching like a hawk for them to sneak something in that was a product, and it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
The last thing I'll say is that I kind of felt like everyone was sleepwalking through their performances. To me, all the actors didn't seem to feel at place and like comfortable in their own skin, and I'm just not sure why that is.
I have no idea.
There's certainly talent here that shouldn't be the case, but I was just like, God, can someone blink? Like what's the deal with no one blinking ever? Like I understand Jafar not doing it because he's a bad guy. Yeah. But even when he yells, he's yelling with his eyes wide open. I was just like, God, it just feels like no one's ever blinking. Like Guy Ritchie's gonna yell at him for doing something human. So anyway, that's it for me as far as quirks go.
Alright, so it's funny you say that because one of my likes is I enjoyed Will Smith's performance. Okay, I thought Will Smith was fine. Like I thought Will Smith as Genie was fine. I thought he was charismatic. I thought that he definitely did what I think they were trying to do, which was after seeing Aladdin from the 90s, that movie, and then watching the musical last year, it is absolutely in between both of those performances. And so it's his own. And I think he absolutely embraces that in this one. So it has some hints of Robin Williams, but it has some hint from the musical, the stage performance of this too. Because it's definitely, those two genies are very different. They have a lot of the like fast talking type of weird stuff happening, but like they're very different genies. And I think Will Smith is in between these, and I think it is his own. And I thought his performance was actually pretty good. And I think his performance is the best out of the movie. But that's also, I can see what you mean, because his performance being the best in this movie is similar to Ewan McGregor having the best performance in the prequels. It's like, it's like everyone's kind of not as good as they should be. Like, how do you?
And should that be the takeaway from?
And should Aladdin? That be the takeaway of all Aladdin? Probably not. So I understand what you're saying there, because I definitely like. How do you have somebody like Samuel L. Jackson be so subdued? And the prequels, I don't know how they possibly do that. It's Samuel L. Jackson, but but. So I get what you're saying there, but I do think that I thought it was his own, and I liked his performance. It was one of the things I liked about the movie. Like I said, that one of my favorite scenes of the movie is the Prince Ali sequence. Like, that one's just a fun sequence that I think everyone's doing fine in. And I think it helps that, Aladdin's not talking during that scene. He's just smiling, and he's a good-looking guy and has a nice smile, so it's fine. The only other thing that I thought was good in this movie was I really enjoyed all the choreography. All the dancing was fun. I thought every time somebody was dancing, it was fun. Yeah. and I just thought that was entertaining, and that's all I have. That's like all I have in terms of this movie.
Yeah, so I definitely had a few likes. I liked that Jasmine wanted to rule the kingdom.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that.
It's a different version, yeah.
For my money, I thought that Dahlia ended up stealing the show for me.
She has a lot of great scenes.
And I would argue that Dahlia and the genie are much more interesting to watch than Aladdin and Jasmine, and that's a shame. But I would agree. Part of me wanted to see just how their date went. And that totally would have been the wrong call to show that in this movie. But I think that kind of would have been fun. There were some things that I really liked that I thought were creative, like the genie making Aladdin dance. Like the way that scene is filmed, I was just like, well, maybe this is why you have Guy Ritchie on something like this, because that was really cool.
It was.
But then there were a lot of things that, at the same time, I felt like a lot of the scenes, because they were just like shot for shot remakes, and I think that's Disney in a nutshell with the way remakes, that they're doing these movies, but nothing really gets added. Like, and that's a problem for me. Like, I enjoyed the whole New World sequence, but what did they really add to that?
They didn't add anything.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just like that's a shame. The one thing that I think they do add to this is giving Jasmine like an appropriate arc for where we are.
Yeah. And I think they definitely focused on that. I think it's noticeable that they focused on that specifically. And
again, so while that's important and that's one of my likes, because of how the rest of this movie is, it's like a detriment to Aladdin. Not that him becoming Sultan, like, that's insignificant. But I just feel like we don't get those. I don't know. I still keep coming back to, we don't get a chance to like him, but you bring up a good point that, well, there are those chances, and it just ends up falling flat. And I think that has a lot to do with the performances and just maybe having a bunch of people in this movie who were not ready for this kind of film.
Yeah.
And that's just such a swing and a miss to come from Disney.
Yeah, and it's the thing I mentioned earlier is with the issues with kind of these performances and everything is, I don't know what happened in the production, but it might have been, they might just not have had time. I feel like all these actors have talent. I just feel like they might have been just rushed. And the people that are the best in this movie are the ones that have a crap load more experience, and that's Dahlia and Genie. So I mean, right. they have a crap load of experience in acting for years and being in front of a camera for years. So it's just one of those things, man. And it's funny that you mentioned the shot for shot remakes, because that's what these have all been. And which is exactly the reason why I haven't been extremely excited about most of these movies. But it's also the reason why I was excited about Mulan. I thought that the way Mulan's completely different. Like, they have some scenes, but it absolutely is not shot for shot. It's a very different movie from its original. And I'm not sure why they decided to take the risk with Mulan and none of these others. But I feel like they should have. So
yeah,
it's really interesting.
Maybe you're right. Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. And who knows, because we haven't been able to see it.
Yeah, I've actually, out of all the remakes, that's the one that I have been watching the most and really wondering how good that movie is and how people react to it, because it is absolutely not the same movie. So it's just, I was real curious about that. So... But you got any other likes?
That is it. That's all.
All right, man.
All she wrote.
So let's go ahead and rate it. I think this movie, it's fun enough to where I don't see why people can't just, Disney Plus and give it a watch with the family for a night or whatever. I think it's a cute movie. I think it has a lot of like technical problems and some of the performances are real rough, but I think it is an okay movie. And so that's what I'm going to go with.
All right. Well, okay isn't good enough. So
that's fair.
Skip it. If you're not,
nice.
See it can't just be streaming,
Well, that's
what is watching movies at home anymore? Looking at your phone and
here's
watching
the deal.
A movie.
If movies were available the way they were a year ago, I would refer to this one as a rent it. But
okay, well,
I'm saying Disney Plus it. Like, there's nothing like it's not like when we reviewed Into the Spider-Verse, right, where that movie's available on Netflix, and I'm like, no, go buy it and own it because it's like it's a really freaking good. So it's not like that. But, all right, let's get out of here. So if anybody wants to contact us, you always have us at halfpastpodcast.com.
For now, that's
for now.
I'm not paying for that.
That's fair.
We'll figure it out. We're talking about rebranding, so we need to really dive into that. Like us on Facebook.
We're on iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify.
We're on Stitcher, Libsyn, and TuneIn. I love my Stitcher app.
We always have our email at halfpastcast@gmail.com. That's halfpastcast@gmail.com.
Hey guys, this Twitter thing appears to be catching on, so tweet us at halfpastpodcast.
I'd like to thank everybody for listening and thank everybody for their support. And I guess we're just going to get out of here. I'm not sure what the next one is in our little quarantine series.
I do have an idea for episode 100, so...
Ooh.
Yeah.
All right. Just going to leave everyone, including me, in suspense.
Yep. Well, I'll sort of write it up and maybe we can talk about it, but we should do one of these next week. For sure.
All right, fantastic. This is the Half Past Podcast. I'm Graham Ricks.
Jonesy.
See you next flick.
Man, that was my best Jonesy in a while. Oh, I should just record it perfectly once and have you put it in.
I am not going through and cutting that in every episode, so no.
All right, I'll hit this.